Well, I think that we want to take what was in the 12th five-year plan and just intensify it, but also make sure that it really supports some of these new laws and pollution action plans, which I think is they're going to do. I mean, it used to be that the plans were just, they were there, they were beautiful, but they weren't really connected with laws and things on the ground, and they're much more integrated today. I mean, what I'd really like to see, besides ramping up energy efficiency and renewable energy, they've got to come down much stronger on the issue of enforcement of pollution regulations. I mean, some of that we see in the new air pollution law, air pollution action plan, but it's got to have the 1-2 punch of both plan and the laws to make some real changes.
You think about the bilateral agreement between the United States and China. I should say it's a tentative agreement, but although it is real, and as we get into Paris, there's a lot of expectations that both countries can sort of lead the rest of the world into some real concrete, actionable plans.
The Chinese government, again, they made these big commitments to cap coal, which in and of itself was amazing, that they said they would even put those two words together, cap coal, in the same sentence. But there's talk now in China that they want to, in the government and the specialists, that they want to do that before 2030, more like 2025, maybe even 2020. Just announced last week that they're going to probably stop construction of coal-fired power plants. Could be a case that, you're closing the gate after the horse has already scurried off, but it's an important signal that really coal is no longer king. And that's crucial. But at the same time, a lot of effort needs to be made in terms of car emissions, because that's been really an area where air pollution emissions, CO2 emissions just continue to climb.
One of the big issues is, as you highlighted, that you can stop the pollution. But what about the areas that already are polluted or contaminated, for example, the soil?
The soil pollution, I mean, that's probably the toughest environmental problem that China is facing. I mean, water is serious, and a lot of that, again, contaminating the soil. I mean, first and foremost, have to stop the pollution of the soil, because you can't even begin to think of remediation. There's been tiny doors open in China to start thinking about it. I mean, I think there's a World Bank project starting on soil remediation, but the need is great. But then it also links up a lot with accountability of local governments. I mean, you're going to have to link, well, who actually polluted this? It goes back to enforcement. You hear me saying that again and again, but that really has been the biggest obstacle. I mean, a lot of progress. I mean, China overall, the push for transparency. We did find out last year, remember, that out of 74 cities, in terms of their air pollution targets, only 8 of them met it, which to me was good news, because we knew only 8 met it. And so having the doors thrown open on information adds the pressure.
We often talk about these solutions and problems in China, but I do want to ask a question about what's happening in the rest of the world. You look at other countries, and there are cities in the United States, I won't name, that have had their own pollution problems. What has worked in specific countries that could be adopted, for example, in China?
Well, I think that, let's look at the U.S. I mean, one of the issues, let's think of Southern California, right? That's one of our still glorious pockets of fairly polluted air at times. But they've made great progress, not only because they enforce the laws, but they have a regional air quality management. And that another good news story for China in the past year is that Beijing, Tianjin, and Hebei have started to follow that kind of model, looking at air pollution as a regional issue and not just focusing on just the coal or just Beijing, but saying that, all right, this whole region has got to manage it better. Now, admittedly, some of that is just moving out the dirty plants further west. We'll have to come to that later about what's happening in Western China. I think that's a mistake. You're displacing the pollution. And I mean, in Western China, where they are much poorer, I mean, a local government official is saying, sure, come on in. But that can have great impact in the long run. But there's also the cash and carry karma issue, that you move it out west, the wind blows to east, and the cities in the east will still get the pollution.